Hi, everybody. Welcome and thank you. Thank you so much for taking time from your busy lives to join us tonight. I am Brett Walter, founder and CEO of Climate Action Now. We're excited to have you here with us to learn about the threats to our forests and to take action to help preserve them. We'll do introductions in a minute, but before we do, I'd like to acknowledge the participation and sponsorship of this event by Environment America, Earth Justice, Defenders of Wildlife, and Elders Climate Action. Thank you to those organizations. All of you are here at our invitation to not only learn about the threats to our forests, but also to help save them by advocating for their preservation with decision makers using the Climate Action Now app. To that end, I'd like to ask Matthew Vollrath, our head of content, which is our word for the actions you find in the app, to tell you how to get started with it. Matthew?
Great. Well, hello, everyone. Many of you I know are very familiar with the app. Your old hat to this system that we do at the beginning of the action parties here. But in case you're new to it, I've just put up something we call the goal tracker. And as you can see, we've got a little box on the right-hand side. It's called a QR code. And that's how you're going to get access to the actions that we have prepared for you tonight. So in order to get into those actions in the app, you're going to want to take out your phone. iPhone or Android will work just fine. And open up your camera, whatever you use to take pictures, and point your phone camera right at that box. And a little yellow sort of bubble should pop up. It says Climate Action Now. Go ahead and tap on that, and it will take you to the App Store to get the app. So you can get started with that process, downloading the app, making an account. Should only take a couple minutes. And as soon as you're done with that, it will take you right to the forest actions that we've prepared tonight. We have about, I think, 75 of them that some Cornell students have created. They're really great actions to Congress, to business folks, to various people advocating for protecting our forests. And as you can see, every time somebody takes one of those actions, our little tracker goes up. So we've sent 12,371 messages already, and it's going up in real time. Our first goal for tonight is to hit 12,750. So let's see how quickly we can hit that goal and keep the numbers rolling up so that we can save our forests tonight.
Thank you. And guess what? I just was taking actions and earned a tree. There's the proof right there. And we will, in fact, plant a tree for me and on your behalf as you earn trees by taking action. So thank you for that. Thank you, Matthew. If you've used the Climate Action Now app before, you know we've made it super easy for you to send personalized, well-written, well-researched messages to political and business leaders. So I hope everybody here will please use the app to send messages, if not tonight, then tomorrow or afterwards. Public opinion is the only effective counterweight to the immense power of the special interests that are wrecking the planet for their profit. They have money, we don't, but we do have our voices and our opinions. So your opinions really matter. Your opinion is your superpower, but it doesn't count for anything if you don't express it. And the app is your opinion multiplier. It is your megaphone. So please join us in taking action tonight and afterwards. I'd like to invite you to put your name and location in the chat and share your video if you're comfortable with that. And if you have questions for our panel, please enter them in the chat. So with that, I'd like to introduce tonight's moderator and my good friend and Climate Action Now's Director of Food Policy, Dr. Marianne Krasny. Marianne is also the director of the Civic Ecology Lab at Cornell University. So over to you, Marianne.
Thank you, Brett. And I just wanted to say, Matt, I don't know if you're looking at the chat, but there's a few people with some technical questions about how to get onto the actions.
Yes, thank you. Please do continue to put those questions in the chat. I will get to them as soon as I can. Yeah, don't let technical difficulties stand in the way of taking action tonight.
Yeah, they might get way up in the scrolled thing there. So if you don't get answered right away, then type them in again. And as Brett mentioned, I'm on the faculty at Cornell University, and in the fall we had a climate solutions course, and we had a team of students, of which several are on the call now, who wrote forestry letters, forestry actions, and then Matthew put them into this campaign, the Save the Forest campaign, probably around beginning of December or so, and already there's over 12,000 people who have sent the letters, so thanks to Matthew, thanks to the students. I see at least one other student on tonight, Eliza Gifford, and then we have Julia Fernandez, who's one of our co-hosts, and she's going to introduce our speakers tonight. So thank you, Julia.
All right, and I just want to thank everybody for coming again, and I'll go ahead and begin with our featured guests. So we have joining us tonight, Ellen Montgomery. She's the director at the Public Lands Campaign at Environment America, where she runs campaigns to protect America's beautiful places, from local beachfronts to remote mountain peaks. Before her current role, Ellen worked as the organizing director for Environment America's Climate Defenders campaign. Ellen lives in Denver, where she likes to hike in Colorado's mountains. Our second guest speaker tonight is Lauren McCain. She's a senior federal lands policy analyst at Defenders of Wildlife and leads the organization's National Forests and Grasslands program. Defenders is a national conservation organization dedicated to the protection of all native animals and plants in their natural communities. Lauren has worked and published in the wildlife and wildlands conservation field for over 20 years. She's based in Denver, Colorado, and has been with Defenders since 2014, and focuses on influencing the U.S. Forest Service to advance habitat restoration and conservation for the benefit of at-risk species that occur on National Forest Systems lands. Our third and final guest speaker tonight is Peter Woodbury. He's a senior research associate in the School of Integrated Plant Science within the Soil and Crop Sciences section at Cornell University. He works with multidisciplinary teams to develop and use models to quantify the sustainability of agricultural and forest ecosystems, including the side effects of land management practices. In his extension and outreach, he develops and shares information about the benefits provided by agricultural and forest ecosystems, and about management techniques that can increase these benefits, improve air, soil, and water quality, and mitigate climate change. And with those introductions, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Ellen Montgomery to get us started.
Great, thank you so much for having me. I am going to share my screen. And hopefully that's working. So again, thank you so much. My name is Ellen Montgomery, and I am Environment America's Public Lands Campaign Director, and I oversee our work to protect forests. And I'm based in Denver and have been with Environment America's national network since 2001. So I want to start with a little bit of context about forests, and this will probably be repeated by the other speakers. But forests are critical to slowing the speed of climate change. They absorb and store carbon and a greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas that contributes to global warming. When trees die, much of that carbon can be trapped indefinitely as carbon-rich soil. So forests will just continue to store carbon. The process of removing carbon from the atmosphere directly offsets the global warming effect of burning fossil fuels. And in fact, our planet's forests absorb enough carbon dioxide to offset 1.5 times the amount of carbon emissions released by the United States each year.
Ellen, I'm sorry if I could interrupt. I
Yes,
think there's something on your screen which is obstructing part of your slide.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it at the top?
No, it's on the left.
On the left. Interesting.
Yeah, it's
Okay, now
sort of a big square box.
Okay, apologies. Let me see.
My guess would be that you shared your entire screen instead of just that tab. And so what we're seeing is the gray is kind of where you have us all located.
Okay, let me.
That seems right. Yeah.
Yeah, let me see if I can figure this out. Apologies.
Julia, you think she should stop share? Yeah, stop sharing and
Yeah,
then share just the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I think that should work.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Julia.
Do that again. Okay. Share screen. Let's try.
You'd think we hadn't rehearsed this, but we did, folks. So Murphy's Law strikes again. Meanwhile, you can be sending actions on your phones or sending messages on your phones. There we are. And we still have a gray blob there in the middle of your screen. Oh, that went away. I think if you let's just not press our luck. I think you've got it now, Ellen.
Okay. So, all right, let's see. Oh, I think that's interesting. Sorry, I'm now struggling to. All right, can you see it now? The screen?
We can see it, yeah.
Okay.
That works. That
Good,
works.
okay. I think I just had a couple things on top of each other, so sorry. Okay, so forests slow the speed of climate change. They are also essential for biodiversity. And it's estimated that 80% of the world's biodiversity is located in forests. And in addition, forests are also critically important for filtering clean drinking water, providing clean drinking water to millions of people across the globe, millions of Americans, and a lot of us use them for spiritual and recreational benefit. So what are the problems? Each year, Earth is losing a land area nearly the size of Costa Rica of forests. This devastation is occurring across the globe in tropical forests, temperate forests, in the boreal forest in Canada and Russia. And when forests are removed or degraded, much of the carbon that they were storing is released into the atmosphere. And despite the common misperception that carbon released from these areas can be counteracted by planting new trees, it's far more carbon efficient to simply allow existing forests to remain standing. And in fact, forests that are cut down often emit more carbon than they capture for more than 10 years after they were logged, and replanting does not make up for this carbon loss because the individual trees are smaller and so are absorbing less carbon when they're younger. And I want to be clear, planting trees is a good thing, but planting trees doesn't make up for the damage caused by deforestation and fragmentation from logging. And additionally, in addition to the carbon benefit or problems, obviously logging and deforestation fragments habitat, which is a huge problem for species, especially species that need more land and more area in order to move around and get where they need to go. So what do we need to do? Number one, we need to stop deforestation. I think most people agree with that and probably know about that. Number two, we need to stop logging in primary and old growth forests. And then number three, end the practice of logging in mature forests. And I'm going to run through our campaigns on each of those pieces. So on stopping tropical deforestation, the 7 commodities cause or the extraction or clearing land for 7 commodities causes about 60%, almost 60% of the world's agricultural deforestation. So these are beef, soy, cocoa, coffee, rubber, palm oil, and wood products like timber and paper. We are tackling deforestation at Environment America, and I think several other groups are working on this as well in 2 ways. So one is supporting the Forest Act in Congress. FOREST is a clever acronym for Fostering Overseas Rule of Law and Environmentally Sound Trade, which would prohibit the importation of any commodities produced on land that was deforested illegally. And this could promote better oversight of protected forests in other countries and just greater supply chain traceability. And then we are also working to educate consumers and persuade companies and state and local governments to change their purchasing practices and also avoid buying or using commodities, any of these commodities that come from areas that have suffered from deforestation. Second, we are working to save the boreal forest in Canada. So this is an area that is not technically being deforested, but the logging is causing forest degradation. And we are specifically on the boreal focusing on two different sectors of companies in the United States. So we're pushing US tissue paper manufacturer retailers like Procter & Gamble, which makes Charmin and Bounty. We are pushing them to make commitments that will reduce harm done to the boreal forest.
Yeah, we're getting some error messages, which Matthew says that only you can fix. I just texted.
Sorry, this is not supposed to be on the action party, guys.
Hang a second, Matthew's saying
Brett.
something.
You're not muted, Brett.
Oh, oh my goodness. I'm so sorry.
That's
Well,
okay.
Then-
Okay, so so why are we pushing tissue paper manufacturers? Well, to make extremely soft paper products, companies value long and flexible fibers, which are harvested from old, slow-growing trees that grow in the boreal. So essentially, we are cutting down trees so that we can have the softest possible tissues. And then, you know, things like tissues and toilet paper, we literally use for 5 seconds and then throw away or flush. It's kind of insane. And so we are pushing these companies to maybe make, you know, it doesn't need to be the softest tissue ever. It could maybe be slightly less soft and not destroy the boreal forest. And also pushing them to use fibers from non-tree sources. So things like wheat straw or sustainably harvested bamboo or recycled paper. And then similarly, we are asking home improvement retailers like the Home Depot and Lowe's to make commitments that will reduce harm done to the boreal regarding their purchasing practices. And then the third campaign that we are working on at Environment America is our campaign to save America's oldest forests, or our climate forests. This is focused on protecting mature and old growth trees on federal lands. And we've estimated that about 51 million acres of this type of forest is not protected, not currently protected from logging on federal land. So we are running a campaign targeting President Biden to convince the Biden administration to take action to protect mature and old growth forests from logging and other threats that they're facing. Environment America and Earth Justice and a number of other organizations are part of a national coalition, the Climate Forest Campaign, which is a coalition of over 120 organizations that have spent nearly the last 2 years working to convince the administration to take action, and specifically working to convince the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management to end the logging of mature and old growth trees and forests on the land that they manage. We have released 2 reports documenting specific logging projects and management projects that target mature and old growth trees and forests on federal lands. So this is a report cover of one, which is called Worth More Standing. The other is also on our website. And this past summer, we helped to deliver more than 500,000 public comments to the Forest Service, asking them to take action. And the next slide, hopefully this will work sound wise. We've got a short video of a bunch of our activists actually delivering the petitions and talking about collecting them. So let me press play and see if this works.
So where are you today? right here in DC, outside of the Forest Service. We're on our way to deliver over 450,000 public comments about our campaign to protect these old growth trees.
There have been studies of some Northwest forests that found just 3% of the oldest and largest trees store more than 40% of the carbon in that forest. We hope simply that President Biden will carry through on the steps he's already taken to protect these old growth and mature forests from logging for future generations.
So we have plenty of people out here today. We have fellow canvassers as well as lots of people from the community, and we're really excited to just push out our message and show as much support as we can.
So I'm really happy to be here with all these activists today, and we're excited to walk across the street and share our voice with the administration.
It really just fills you with this sense of wonder about our planet, you know, looking at something that's been there longer than you've been alive and you can't even wrap your arms around is really just an experience that I think everyone should be able to have.
These trees have been here. They were here long before we were. They'll be here hopefully long after. They're part of our heritage. There's really no technology we have or that we're going to develop anytime soon that's going to really remove carbon from the atmosphere the way that these trees can.
Every year that a tree grows, it sucks up some carbon and keeps it in the bark and the leaves and the structure of the tree. And the more years that they have to do that, the better.
These long-standing old forests are something that was enjoyed by our grandparents, our parents, and our generation now, and it's something that I would like my children and my grandchildren to be able to enjoy.
And these forests are just a lot more valuable standing and living than they are as logs.
Especially with everything going on today, people really need a way to get out, to disconnect from current events and just reconnect with nature.
A lot of people have mentioned that they spend a lot of their free time actually vacationing in old growth forests, skiing in the winter times, or just also spending their weekends, staying in cabins in the local parks. It's actually really fun having conversations with all of the folks who are as passionate about the issue as I am, and also just getting to learn why old growth forests are important to them. I even had one man, and once I told him that we were working to save the Nantahala, he informed me that these were the waters and the forest that he grew up around. He learned to swim right by the forest that we were working to protect. It brought him to the verge of tears.
And I think that canvassing has been such a way to push myself out of my comfort zone. It wasn't something that I thought I would be able to do. Every day I go out and surprise myself.
You don't really know what every interaction is going to be like, but on the whole, when you're working on an issue like this, so many people just care so much about the issue that they're jumping at the opportunity to get their voice heard.
We love our trees and forests, and it's no surprise that people chose to speak up for them. We're here today because nearly 500,000 people have submitted public comments. Our old growth forests and trees are worth more standing, and we're really excited to let the Forest Service know how many people care.
Let's see. There we go. Okay. Getting off the video slide is the next trick. And so that was a video that we shot this summer around an action where we actually delivered these comments. So the great news is that the Forest Service heard us, and in December, on December 19th, they announced a plan to develop a policy to protect old growth in our national forests, which is huge. So the final policy for protecting old growth is expected in January 2025. So approximately 1 year from now. We have a lot of work to do between now and then. So we've got a comment period that ends February 2nd that I think you can take an action on today. We're working to build our movement to add more groups and voices, a whole set of other tactics, expecting another huge 90-day comment period this summer. And again, as I said, final policy expected in January 2025. And that's what I've got. Thank you so much, everyone. Apologies. If you go first, you get all the technical difficulties and get to go over time. So sorry to the other speakers, and I'll turn it over to the next person.
Yeah, so we have Peter next, but Matthew, some people are having problems. They're not using the QR code, but they can't find the campaign. in the app. So
Yes.
maybe you can help a little bit with that while we switch
Yes.
over to Peter's slide.
If we have a second here, I can actually just put up that QR code on the big screen again. Give people a chance to just scan it right now. I can make that happen.
But there's a few people that aren't using the QR code to Matthew.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Well, I will. I'll get to everybody in the chat. Thank you. Yeah. If you have any problems,
Okay.
just let me know, and I'll get to you.
Apparently the campaign code number is 134. Thanks, Renee.
Yes. 134. That's right.
So, and if you're having troubles finding where the campaigns are, I think it's in your upper right-hand screen, corner of your screen. At least it is for my app. All right, Peter, take it away, and we'll answer the questions as they come up. And don't forget, you can put substantive questions, content questions for the speakers too, and we'll be asking them after our last speaker.
Well, thanks, Marianne. Very glad to be here. I just want to make sure everybody is seeing the slides correctly.
Yeah.
Great. So I'll be talking about climate change and forests, focusing on the US. So I'm going to start with the take-home messages, and then we'll come back to them at the end, just to make a nice circle. So forests can help fight climate change, and we've just heard about that. We'll hear a little bit more from me about that. Forests are also threatened by increasing disturbances, and a lot of that is our fault. Forests can do more to fight climate change if we help them do that, but they need our help. And of course, forests provide many benefits besides fighting climate change. All right, this is the most complicated slide, and you don't need to read all of it. The big idea are circles here, and these are cycles of carbon. So as we've already heard, as forests grow, they are taking thin air and they're making trees out of it. So they're storing carbon dioxide as wood. It doesn't stay there forever. The trees will eventually die and decompose, and that carbon will be emitted again to the atmosphere. And this loss of carbon can really be sped up by disturbances such as fire or pests and diseases. There's also wood products. So that's another place where carbon can be stored from this carbon cycle. So if we can put wood into a building for 100 or 500 years, we're storing carbon as well in those wood products. So in terms of forests fighting climate change, just looking at the top curve here, this is showing an increase in carbon in a forest stand over time. So we start with 0 years and go all the way up to 175 years. And this top curve is showing all the carbon that's accumulating in this stand each year. And what we see is, for the first 100 years, rapid increase in the amount of carbon in the forest. And then there's still increase after 100 years, but it's slowing down. Eventually, the losses from the carbon in the forest will equal the gains. So there'll be kind of a net amount of carbon that's standing there. So that very old forests are not removing more carbon from the atmosphere in general, or doing it very slowly. But as we've heard, they have many other values for habitat. Old growth is important for many reasons.
So Peter, I'm sorry if I could just interrupt you. I wanted to observe everybody. We have reached our goal. We've spent 13,000 messages. Thank you. Keep doing it. Matthew, if you would, why don't you bump us up to say 13,400. Sorry to interrupt you, Peter. I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, that's fine. That's great.
Thank you so much. Please continue.
So forests are helping us. We heard globally that forests are helping take up some of the carbon that we are emitting to the atmosphere. And just in the US, forests are sequestering, that is, removing on an annual basis from the atmosphere 14% of our emissions. So that's a significant benefit that we're getting from these forests. So the darker colors show where there's more carbon being removed from the atmosphere, and the yellow color shows where actually forests are emitting carbon to the atmosphere. So that's in the arid west, the arid inland west, where the forests are in trouble. And we'll talk about that a little bit more right now, in fact. So what's going on there? Forests are under threat from all kinds of disturbances, and one of them is drought. So on this map, the red areas show where there's more drought in the last 20 years than there has been in the previous 80 years. So all of these red and yellow areas are showing a real drought problem in the arid West. And along with drought, of course, we get more fire as well. But other forests are under threat. In the Northeast, deer are preventing forests from regrowing. They're eating the next forest. And this is, yet again, a problem we've created by the way we are managing our ecosystems and the way we are allowing high populations of deer, much higher than they were hundreds of years ago. And of course, as we heard at the global scale, we're losing forest land to many things. In many parts of the world, that's agriculture. In the US, we're losing forest land to all kinds of things, including development. We also have a lot of problem with pests and diseases. And this key word of invasive means, again, it's us humans that are to blame here. We're bringing bugs and pests in from other places. We're moving them around, and we're creating huge problems for our forests that are being killed by these pests and diseases that are moved to a place where they don't have any natural enemies to control them. And then there's climate change. We've heard about this year being the hottest year ever, and climate change is increasing these problems of drought, fire, diseases, and pests. So there's no problem that climate change can't make it worse. All right, so how can we help forests fight climate change and be healthier? So we want to maintain forest land and forest carbon, and we've heard about that. And I'll have a little bit more to say about that. We also want to increase carbon sequestration in forests. So this means increasing the growth rate of our working forests, meaning forests that we're managing for production. So if we can increase the growth rate of a whole forest, we're removing more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere each year. We can also plant trees. A lot of places have been deforested, and we can grow new forests there, but it takes time, money, and effort. We can also add trees everywhere, really. We can add them in urban and suburban areas, in villages, and in agriculture. For example, silvopasture means combining trees with pasture, and that can actually help the livestock by providing shade and other benefits from the trees, while still having it be productive land. And again, we can use harvested wood products to store carbon. And this is especially valuable if we can use wood instead of concrete and steel, because they really emit a lot of greenhouse gases in their production and use. So a little bit more about how we can help forests maintain forest land and forest carbon. You've heard this twice, and you may hear it even more tonight: avoiding the loss of forest land. We also can manage forests in really dry areas to reduce fire risk. We've created a fire problem in the West, ironically, by preventing fires. So natural fire regimes in the past would have a low intensity fire that burned out the underbrush, but didn't kill the trees. We've prevented those small fires over the last 100 years. And now when we have fires, they can kill all the trees. So it's possible in some areas to have some controlled fires and manage these forests to reduce that fire risk. And we need to try to do a better job of managing pests and diseases that keep our forests healthy and growing. So as I mentioned, after trees are harvested, the carbon they stored continues to be there in the wood. So again, if we can replace concrete and steel, we get a double benefit. We're storing carbon in the wood, and we're also getting rid of the emissions associated with that concrete and steel. I've been focusing on carbon, but of course we don't want to think about forests in any one dimension, even something as important as carbon. So we value forests for many things: wildlife habitat, water quality, the value of wilderness itself, and many more things. So those are the messages I wanted to share with you this evening, and thank you for joining us tonight.
All right, thank you, Peter. And don't forget, if you have questions for any of our speakers, to put them in the chat. Julia and I are keeping track of them, and we'll be asking them after our final speaker, who's Lauren McCain from Defenders of Wildlife.
Everybody.
It's good.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Lauren McCain, Defenders of Wildlife. And what I do is focus on the Forest Service and try to pester the Forest Service into doing a better job protecting threatened and endangered species and their habitat. But tonight, I'm actually going to be talking about wildfire, and I'm going to be talking about Congress and its relationship to wildfire. And I know that you've taken some actions and have some actions on your list that involve forest management, and particularly wildfire, because it's one of the biggest issues. It is probably the biggest issue that the Forest Service is dealing with right now. So I'm sure you all know this, but we need fire. We need fire on the landscape. It's essential for so many wildlife species. You know, even severe fires, which I think a lot of people think are like unnatural, that look like they've burnt up and killed all of the trees, are super important for a lot of species as well. They regenerate and into like an early sterile forest, and then on to mature and old growth forests. So you have like a cycle of habitats, you know, over generations. And, you know, as Peter was just talking about, you know, we have an issue with climate change, increasing temperatures and drying out the forests. And in some cases, wildfires are becoming larger. We have a really, fire season is no longer a season. It can happen anytime during the year. So we have fire problems. And it depends on where you are, what the definition of the problem actually is. And for members of Congress that are concerned about their constituents, first and foremost, this is what the fire problem looks like, is when a fire comes through and burns down houses, kills people, puts people and their animals, livestock, and pets in danger, that is a fire problem for a member of Congress. And, they, the biodiversity issues, the habitat issues, Democrat, Republican are usually going to come second to that. However, management of forests, wildfire, it's not incongruent to be managing ecologically and, also be reducing wildfire risk to communities, which I think is like first and foremost to me and to many of my colleagues in the advocacy community, is that we don't necessarily want to fight fire by cutting all the trees down to prevent it, which some in Congress maybe would like to do, but I think there are other alternatives to doing that. So how do we get this fire problem? I mean, sure, we've talked about climate change, but there are a lot of other factors. And the Forest Service, which manages 154 national forests, 20 national grasslands, and 1 national prairie across 193 million acres, used to have a policy called the 10 a.m. policy, where folks would look out on those fire towers that you still see in the forests and look for smoke, and then put that fire out by 10 a.m. We have a first iteration of Smokey the Bear, and for decades and decades, the policy was suppress every fire. And as you may know, that caused problems later on. Some forests are naturally dense, and fire goes through those forests at a lot longer time interval, but those fires are naturally severe. Other forests are less dense, and so fire suppression kind of created some increased densities somewhere that are prone to fire under certain conditions, under extreme weather. And we're seeing, of course, extreme weather in the climate change era. So along with the fire suppression and historic mismanagement, just massive scale logging, which actually can contribute to wildfire, and you can ask me that question later. We have these human factors. We talked about climate change a bit, but actually more fires are caused by humans these days than lightning. As after hearing that fact, you may not be surprised to realize that most fires in the, I was going to say the outback, but in wild areas occur on July 4th when we're lighting off fireworks. And we've decided that we like living near the woods. So we have a huge amount of human population in fire-prone areas, in places that are, ready to go up in smoke. And then when that happens, the chief of the Forest Service gets called into Congress and is grilled on what the Forest Service is doing. Whether it's a forest fire, as in the trees, a brush, shrub like chaparral, or grassland fire, the Forest Service is usually blamed. In this case, though, in New Mexico a few years ago, we had like these incredible fires that started on Forest Service land in the Santa Fe National Forest. And they were caused by prescribed burning that the Forest Service was doing to reduce fire risk. And they they got out of control due to some unpredicted windstorms, wind conditions in the area. So like massive scale wildfires, not necessarily what you would call unnatural, but very close to human communities in that northern New Mexico area. And then you see a lot of members of Congress out in their communities, concerned, talking with the Forest Service about what they can do to deal with the wildfire problem, to the extent that it is a problem. So one thing that Congress did under the Biden administration is pass two major acts, Bipartisan Infrastructure Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, that put billions of dollars into wildfire suppression and mitigation, fuels management. So we have that money, and the Forest Service is taking tree thinning and community resilience to a whole new level right now. And these are the goals of the Forest Service now, using the money that was given to them, like this big windfall by those Biden administration laws. So I wanted to just tell you what we're looking for when I'm looking at a bill coming out of Congress that deals with forestry, is we do not want to see wildfire bills under the guise of community safety, forest health, actually, really as a guise to doing a lot of unsustainable logging, even clear cutting, and, the wrong kind of forest thinning and the wrong kind of forests for that type of forest management. So always looking for, that's probably the number one thing that we see in bills coming out of Congress from Dems and Republicans. One thing that I'm always keen on, this is one of my filters, is looking to see if a forestry bill is going to be weakening provisions in the Endangered Species Act, the National Environmental Policy Act, a big concern of ours. But when we do support bills that advance the return of natural fire regimes that we still need, even in the climate change era, of course, to create and provide species that habitat. And we also support, we believe that if forestry is, and of course, we need wood in our world, in the country that we live in, for a variety of reasons. But we think that starting in the communities is the best way to, to get wood products and to help reduce wildfire risk in communities. And I just wanted to say that I echo Ellen. We are both looking at the Forest Service's recent old growth policy proposal right now. And as she said, protecting old growth and mature forests is one of the best, measures to continue having natural fire regimes, because the old large trees are those that are the most fire resistant. So thank you, and I really appreciate Ellen for bringing that up. And Peter, I really enjoyed your talk as well. So thank you all for listening. And I guess we'll be around for questions.
Great, thank you so much, Lauren. And we have about 10 minutes for questions, but before we go there, Matthew, do you have any updates?
On the actions that weren't working, unfortunately, I don't. Just go ahead and skip. I think there's two of them in particular that are giving us problems. So just skip past them. There's 70 more actions that you could take. So we do apologize for that. But yeah, if you see an error, just skip past it. And if anybody's still unable to get into the app, please let me know in the chat. I think I've gotten to everybody, but in case anybody's still struggling, let me know.
Matthew,
Okay.
Matthew, I think I've been talking to our engineer, and we think we fixed those two problems. So if anybody
Okay,
finds
great.
problems, please let us know in the chat. But if the chances are you could go back and do those actions now. Fingers crossed. Okay, thank you. On to the
Great.
question.
And in terms of the goal tracker, we're almost to 13,400. So we've had about 1,000 actions, Matthew, taken during this action party, because we had about 12,000 that were taken before the
Yeah, a
actual
little
event.
over 1,000 so far. So let's keep it going.
Okay, we only got 17 more to go to reach our goal of 13,400. So we had a few questions. I don't know if anybody commented on the question about bidets and whether you are recommending using bidets instead of toilet paper.
I did, and I'm laughing because I get asked that question literally every single time I talk about this campaign. That's certainly a paper-free option, and they're much more common in Europe. I think Environment America, I guess, thinks it'd be a pretty big cultural shift for Americans. So as you might imagine, that's not the first thing we're telling people to do, and instead are focused on, just making the product out of something else. But they're, folks that are, there are a variety of sort of more extreme options that people are pursuing to get away from using tissue products at all. And I'll say, I don't use paper towels in my home. I use, towels that we just wash every week. But we do still use tissues for blowing our noses. I do know people that use handkerchiefs. So anyway, I won't go on and on, but I do get asked that question basically every single time.
Okay. Judy Zinger has a question about the Proven Forestry Management Act. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but apparently there's a 10,000 acre categorical exclusion. Does anybody know what that's about?
Let's see. I appreciate that question. I'm not sure if everybody knows what a categorical exclusion is.
I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
To explain.
Okay, yes. So this is a little bit complicated and policy wonky. That's what I do. So apologize if it is sounding wonky, but the National Environmental Policy Act, that is the act that requires every federal agency to take a hard look at a federal action if it's going to have a significant impact on the human environment, which means for us, but the natural world. And it's when you hear about an environmental impact statement, that is coming from the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, one of our favorites. And so there are different levels of analysis. There's the EIS, the environmental impact statement, which is the highest level. There's an environmental assessment, which is like a little bit of a lower level of scrutiny. And then there's what's called the categorical exclusion, which was what the question was asking. And the categorical exclusion means that the forest or no federal agency actually needs to provide a notice that they're doing any action in the Federal Register, which is the place where the federal government posts like all of the actions that it is supposed to be doing. But the categorical exclusion, there's no requirement. So what it does is it lessens transparency and lessens democracy. And so when you're able to cut 10,000 acres of forest under a provision in NEPA that doesn't allow for strong public comment. There's less transparency of information. You know, that's a problem, one, for democracy, but two, it's a problem when you're harvesting 10,000, acres of land and you haven't had the benefit of public scrutiny, and maybe looking at other alternatives. So, that's what it is. The Forest Service has a ton of what are called these categorical exclusions that it can already do. It can basically almost do anything it really wants to do under a categorical exclusion instead of an EIS or an EA, but Congress seems to want to give the Forest Service as many, and also the BLM, and in some areas, as many categorical exclusions as it can, especially in the area of the wildfire problem. So, and I mean, certainly not all members of Congress, but those that are, wanting to undermine democracy in the space of administrative action. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, it was. I'm pretty sure that we have on the app to support the Proven Forestry Management Act. Is that the name of it? I don't know if any of you have a comment on that act in particular. And as we're trying to decide what bills to support, should we be looking for these categorical exclusions?
Yeah, and I will just say that I work with a team of forest lobbyists. And so, Marianne, I think it was great that you got in contact with Earth Justice and, that we're having communication back and forth, because we can let you know about, some of these bills and some of the intricacies, because they all often really sound great. And then when you read that fine print, you find out that they do something that is completely the opposite of what the title of the bill actually means.
Okay, well, we'll be in touch then. Brett, we have one hand raised. I know we only have 2 more minutes. I know you want to announce a few upcoming action parties, including, don't forget, our chocolate action party, because that'll deal somewhat with forests too, in terms of cocoa plantations. So why don't you take it from here, Brett? And thank you, Ellen and Lauren and Peter. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
And I think impactful.
That was very informative. Yes, I want everybody to know about a couple upcoming action parties that are very important. Let's see, the next one will be on January 30th. And this will be a Get Out the Vote action party with Nathaniel Stinnett, who is the executive director of Environmental Voter Project. If this is an organization you've never heard of, put it at the top of your list of organizations you need to know about. This is this organization probably has the best shot at helping us get out the environmental vote in the next election. And I'm sure I don't need to tell any of you how consequential this, the next national election is going to be for climate and for the world. And so the election is going to be decided by a few tens of thousands of votes in a few states. So it is really critical that all of us do everything we can between now and then to get environmentally minded voters to the polls. By the way, that includes young people as well. So I just put the link into the, I sent it to Kathy. I'll send it to all of you now for that. So please come learn about the Environmental Voter Project. We'll also have actions for you to take there. This is a very, very important action party. And then also on February 1st, we are giving some support to some demonstrations in Washington, D.C. the first week of February to oppose the build out of liquid natural gas infrastructure, which will really be catastrophic if it's allowed to continue. And let me put that also in the
I wanted to mention on the one on February 1st with the liquid natural gas, that one's at 8 o'clock, almost always where it's 7 o'clock. But so
Oh,
just
that's
remember
great.
that one's going to be an hour later, and that one's with Bob Howarth, who's a scientist again at Cornell, and Bill McKibben.
Yeah, and I misspoke. We haven't actually published the Eventbrite for the LN liquid natural gas thing, but I think most of you probably subscribers to the Climate Action Now newsletter. Watch there for this. This is going to be really great. We have Dr. Howarth from Cornell, who really is maybe the world's leading expert on methane, and then also Bill McKibben. A name should be known to many of you. So this will be Dr. Howarth and Bill McKibben together having a conversation about this really big problem of liquid natural gas. That will be on February 1st, as Marianne said, at 8 p.m. Eastern, but I don't have the Eventbrite link for you on that. And one other action party for those of you who are in New York State. This is an action party to, am I not able to send that? I'm not able to, I put it in the chat, but I can't send it. Like my keyboard is frozen. So once again, go to the newsletter. We're having a more than our usual share of technical problems today. I apologize for that. That is, this is for the New York Heat Act. This is a legislation in New York that will help give affordable energy to people in New York. So with that, thank you all so much for being here with us. I just went through that link to the Eventbrite for the New York Heat Act. So for you New Yorkers. And stay tuned to the newsletter for, as I say, the action party link on the, and then on the liquid natural gas. And then also, as Marianne said, what's the day we're going to do the chocolate action party, Marianne?
It's on the 15th of February, right after Valentine's Day.
Yeah, that should be, you want to just give us a quick preview of that, Marianne? It's your baby.
Well, we're rounding up speakers. It's after 8, so I don't want to go too much, but yeah, we'll announce the speakers probably next week. We're meeting with them Tuesday just to firm it up, and it'll be focusing a lot on, you know, who I think it was Ellen Slide had about cocoa as being one of the top 10 causes of deforestation. So we'll focus on that, a little bit on some of the labor issues with cocoa plantations, and then just we're hoping to get also a sustainable chocolate producer, so we'll get the business perspective on what you can do in terms of sourcing and to get more sustainable source of chocolate.
Right. Okay, so that's it, folks. Thank you again. Thanks to our panel. Thanks to all of you for showing up and taking action and sending messages. This is how we win. We don't win by being quiet. We win by sending messages, by expressing our opinions. And thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you at our next action party. Bye-bye.